Hi, good morning, Rod Fleming here in the Philippines. I want today to do a shorty, but I want to talk about gender. And to start with, when we think about gender, and we're just going to leave aside all of the 167 nonsense genders or whatever it is, the 58 nonsense genders that the British National Health Service apparently recognises. I believe at one point there was a state in Germany that recognised over 800. I mean, it's just ludicrous. We can solve all that. We can get rid of all that nonsense very simply just by doing what I'm about to do. So, there's another system of gender, and I was introduced to this by a book by a guy called Don Kulik, now Professor Don Kulik, who teaches at the University of Uppsala. Now, he had spent a year in the 1990s. I actually think this was his PhD thesis. He spent a year living in a big house in Salvador de Bahia in Brazil, northern Brazil. And he was sharing this house with lots of travestis, which are, as I said before, basically Brazilian ladyboys. They're right all over the entire continent of South America and Central America. And indeed, large parts of North America too. Mexico's part of North America. Anyway, he was having difficulty because, like me, he was, and like a lot of you, he was, excuse me, I adjust this bloody thing. He was kind of tied into this Northern European way of thinking about things, and you look at the genders and you look at the gender presentations and you've got man and woman, which, let's be quite honest, for a very, very long time, that's what we had. And it's only in the last, very short period of time that this has even been questioned. But his problem was that he was dealing with these travestis. I'll move a little bit for the flare. He was living with these travestis. Now, they did not consider themselves to be men. They were male, but they did not consider themselves to be men. On the other hand, they didn't think they were women either. And this was confused Don Kulik. No, right? So what are you? Are you a third gender? And they went, no, we're not men. And at first he thought that was kind of just like, well, we're not men, I'm not green. It's like a nothing statement. It's a negative. And slowly he began to realise that it was actually a positive statement. That this referred to a specific group. Everyone, in fact, who wasn't a man was a not man. So it became an actual title when you put a little hyphen in, not man, which Kulik started doing. I do as well. Kulik didn't cook up this idea. He got it from somebody else, I think, a Mexican academic. I don't remember her name. It's a long. This was 20 odd years ago that I read this stuff. So anyway. Oh, first read it. So anyway, we have this situation where you have men who are masculine men, right? You are man. You are very manly men, right? And with that group, you will also find adolescent boys who are learning how to be men. Let's put it that way. They're at that stage, they're learning what you have to do. And in that group, very often, you'll find that there are rites of passage that they're called. And sometimes these are extremely painful or dangerous. Spartan boys had to go and live in the wilderness with no food, no help. They had to just survive for, I think it was a month, and then they could come back if they didn't die in the meantime. And if they didn't die, well, you can be a man now. In the Philippines, they use circumcision. It's not performed soon after birth, as it is in other cultures. Here it's done at 13 years old without an anaesthetic. Think about that a minute. It's kind of eye-watering, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh, really? No anaesthetic, not even an ice cube. Just, they put a knife up through the prepuce and they slice it out. And that is actually a rite of passage, because once the boy has got that, then he can be a man. His manhood has been ritually unsheathed, right? and so he can now step forward into the life of being a man. Men are also very strictly policed in their behaviour by other men. There's lots of things you're not allowed to do, and lots of things you should do, or must do in fact. You're expected to be loyal, you're expected to be honest, you're expected to support your brother. I mean, it's really like the idea of a band of brothers, you know, and that's why feminists hate it, because it's a very strong social structure. All the men in the men group support each other. You know, it's one for all and all for one. You take on one of us, you have to deal with all of us. You know, that's the men group. Now, we have other classifications as well, but we'll talk about that later. Now, that leaves everybody else. That is women, to start with. Well, women aren't men, right? So they're automatically not men. But it's also true that the travestis, who regard themselves as homosexuals and not as women, are also not men. They're not women, but they're not men, so they're still a not men group. Children, boy children under the age of 13, usually, roughly and about there, they're also part of the not men group. And there's a kind of a very strange, and you'll see it here in the Philippines, there's a strange kind of, it is actually almost like a third gender, but it's the old guys. It's older men who are no longer capable of, for example, hunting, being soldiers, whatever it is that they do. And basically it's retired men here. So men in you know, over 60, the age of retirement is 60 here. So they're over 60, and technically therefore I'm part of that group. They aren't really men anymore, because they can't do the things that men are expected to do, most of which, well, would involve danger. But they form this kind of other group, which is kind of like the wise men, if you like. So that the younger men who are still active and actually participating in this man group can consult them and say, look, you know, well, we don't know how to do this. You know, a damn tractor's broken down. I haven't a clue where to start. Just a minute, son. I'll come away along and I'll bring my tools. I'll see if I can help you out. You know, that's basically how it works. So they kind of exist as a you know, a kind of repository of information and knowledge for the other men, for the broader men group. And you get something similar inside the not men group, because before we go there, you have to understand that the men group, it has no real hierarchy. You're as good as your last job. That's it. It's what I call a fraternal meritocracy. You know, we're all brothers, but if you screwed up, well, you're not getting to do that again. So it's led by whoever is most proficient in whatever task that they're trying to do. It's a really practical system. And again, that's why feminists absolutely hate it, because it's like, how do you break this? How can you defeat this? Because the guys are all going to be completely loyal to each other, and they're going to choose the best one to lead them in any situation. Now, within the not men group, you also have a hierarchy, but it's based on motherhood, right? Well, the principal one. If you're not a mother in this, you're still a not man, but you don't have status. Wait a minute. Sorry, motorbike outside. You don't have real status. You have girl status, you know. And your virginity in most cultures like this, not all, but in most, will be strictly protected, you know. No play fooling around with the boys for you, my dear. Not until we get one of them, you know, properly hitched to you. Once a female, if you like, has delivered a baby, once she's produced new life, she becomes a fully fledged woman and a member of the hierarchy. And as she has more kids and gets older, she goes up the hierarchy. This society, the not men group, is run by the grandmothers. It's run by the Lolas. And you can see that anytime you come to the Philippines, anywhere in Southeast Asia, Latin America, you'll see this happening. Men do not gainsay their grandmothers. No, no, no. The grandmother's in charge of that group. Everybody says, yes, yes, Lola. Yes, yes, what do you want us to do? I will do it. But inside that group also, remember, are, well, the homosexuals, to put it bluntly. Both, and lesbians. Lesbians don't get to be part of the main group because they're not male. But homosexuals, that is males who are not, for some reason or another, not part of the main group, they're in the not main group, but they can't access the status of motherhood. Can have a baby. So there's another system which is applicant to them, right? Which is shared in by the younger women, the younger females rather, and that is the performance of beauty. And that's why there are so many beauty contests. That's why, travestis and ladyboys and all their equivalents across the planet are constantly performing beauty as much as they possibly can. And they're very, very good at it. I mean, believe me, they are really good at it. So we have this two-group system, and it's principally men and not men, but sometimes I've called it the away and the home group, because basically the men are never there. I mean, they're always away doing something, whether it's work or fighting or hunting or whatever, they're away. And the home group originally was centered around the village, so that's where the children are, the baby children are, so they have to be, you can't move around with them. They have to be in one place, protected, you see? So I often call this the away and the home group, but it's still the same thing. It's the men and not men. Okay, so this is what you have to understand, that when we talk about ladyboys and travestis, traviesas, they're all over the place, different names. This is not a third gender. There are only two genders. And in this system, the genders are man and not man. Simple. It's really, really simple. And it derives from Roman sociology and culture. Roman society and culture, rather. Greco-Roman, if you insist. Roman is more brief. Anyway, I'm coming up to 12 and a half minutes here, so I'm going to stop now. And we'll do more on this. Because this is really, really important. You can't really understand ladyboys or travestis unless you understand this. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.